2018 meeting. Wait a minute, we just had the light change on us. I'm going to wait a minute, we're going to start this over. All right. I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, September 4th, 2018 meeting of the Edina Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. Janet, can I have a roll call, please?
Yep. Commissioner Miller?
Here.
Commissioner Strother?
Here.
Commissioner Nelson?
Here.
Commissioner Good?
Here.
Commissioner Itis?
Here.
Commissioner Anderson?
Here.
Commissioner Osborne?
Here.
Thank you, Janet. And we're going to take a step back at the moment before going to item number 3, just to introduce our 2 new student commission members today. So we have Aiden Manderson and Bryn Osborne joining us, first meeting today, and will be with us for the next 12 months. So just want to pause for a second and allow each of you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about why you decided Park and Rec Commission was something to spend your time on.
So, hello, I'm Aiden Anderson. I'm a junior at Edina High School. I got interested in the Parks and Rec Commission because I play rugby and football, and I know what we have to go through to schedule fields, and I just kind of want to see what the inside process was for that. And I'm also I'm a Boy Scout applying for his Eagle Scout, and as I'm finishing up my scouting work, I wanted to start getting into more city work. So, thank you.
I'm Bryn Osborne. I'm also a junior at Edina High School. I've been a figure skater for 10 years, so I'm really involved at the Braemar Arena under the jurisdiction of the Parks Department. I'm also a volunteer for the DREAM program, which helps disabled kids learn to skate. And so I'm very involved in that, which is under the jurisdiction of the Parks Committee. I've also lived in Edina my whole life and was really involved in going to the parks as a kid. It was something I really enjoyed, so that's why I was interested in this commission.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Aiden and Bryn. Welcome. Glad to have you. Next on our agenda, approval of tonight's meeting agenda. Could I have a motion?
So move. Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to approve our meeting agenda for this evening. Any comments, questions, issues about tonight's agenda? Hearing none, then all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. That passes. Next up, approval of our meeting minutes from just 2 weeks ago, Monday, August 20th, 2018, that we held at the Braemar Golf Course. Could I have a motion on that, please?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, been moved and seconded to approve our minutes from August 20th. Any comments, questions, issues with those minutes? Everything looks okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. That passes. All right, community comment. Anyone in our audience tonight that would like an opportunity for community comment? None? All right, we'll move on then. Reports and recommendations. First up on our agenda tonight is consideration of the Edina Wrestling Association as a city-sponsored athletic association. With Tiffany being out on maternity leave, Susan, are you going to handle that for us this evening?
Yep,
okay, great.
I am. So we are asking the Parks and Recreation Commission tonight to approve the Edina Wrestling Association as the official city-sponsored athletic association in Edina. Louis Nebel is here this evening, and he will be serving as president of the association and is also available to answer any questions that the commission may have. So the Edina Wrestling Association was an established wrestling association in Edina from 1986 to 1996. The association folded in 1996 due to a decreased enrollment, a difficult time finding volunteers and funding to help support the program. So in 2016, the city started a wrestling program in partnership with Mr. Nebel with the intent that eventually a formal wrestling association would be formed. So for the last 2 years, we've worked really closely with the group proposing the Wrestling Association. And there is strong support now from the community, from the parents, to revive the Edina Wrestling Association. Staff, we are recommending that the commission approves the addition of the Wrestling Association as the official city-sponsored association in Edina. Based on the fact that they have met and completed all of the requirements that have been established by the Youth Athletic Association relationship document. There is not another provider in Edina offering the same or a similar program. And that really since 2016, when the city started that youth wrestling program, that intent was that the program would evolve into the Wrestling Association. So with that, I'd like to open it up to the commission for any questions.
Questions?
I have a question. I think I prompted it last time when we met in August. I was just trying to get to understand really the benefits for the association as well as for the city, and maybe the cons as well, in terms of making a decision. I mean, right now, looking at what we have here, I would say, yeah, go for it, but I'm just curious to understand before I just read through it on that.
I don't know about any cons, but I think some of the benefits are that the Parks and Recreation Department will provide facilities and help arrange and schedule for the Wrestling Association in particular, work with the school district. As a recognized athletic association, in our priority usage, they would be a higher priority. Therefore, they would have better access to the space. So that's one. We also have a staff liaison that works with our department, Tiffany, and she will provide some administrative support for the association. And, you know, the Edina Parks and Recreation Department, in cooperation with the commission, just helps the association with planning, providing safe experiences. If there are any issues, grievances, the city will provide some support.
Great, and I got that. I was just trying to make sure I understood from both sides of it the pros for the city. So I understand why they would want that, but I really just want to make sure we understand from the parks perspective. You know, I mean, because we're using our staff and we're using our facilities to do a lot of work that they're currently having to do themselves. So is there like a what's the win for the city? Is that making sense what I'm asking? So
Can you just...
Yeah, can I ask it again?
Yeah.
So I understand the pros for the association to want to do that. Mm-hmm. I'm just curious with the pros in terms of the city, what the benefits we get out of that.
Well, I think in this particular situation, Lewis has really been running the program, so the expertise I think is really helpful. Having people that are passionate, that understand the program, how the programs are developed, I think is a real benefit for really for staff and for the Edina and for the residents to have that expertise.
I would maybe add one more thing too. From a staff perspective, we don't have the staff to run all of these associations. So without these dedicated volunteers, we wouldn't have these programs in Edina.
Question for Member Miller. So you guys have been in existence for a couple of years, correct? Correct.
We've been involved with the program since 2016. So it was founded, I believe, in 2015 when we started building. But 2016 is when I started really getting involved with it with my two sons. They're now in high school. And evolved throughout the years where we tried different methods of competition. And now we're advancing even further to where we have a preseason, a postseason, a freestyle Greco season. So now with flexibility for us to do more with the kids in the community is high.
Okay. So where have you been practicing and
Well, we've
competing?
always been practicing the Edina High School, their gym now. They've been their gym's been. We've had access through the Park and Rec. Our first year with the Edina High School wrestling room was last year. So we've now we're going to continue working, having the relationship with the Edina High School with Josh Burhan's the wrestling coach. we're directly a feeder program for him as well. So he sees the benefit of that as well for his program. So
mats and rooms and resources is all at Edina High School, and it's all there, and you've been using it anyway.
we've been using the resources there, and we've also been asking for minor resources from the Edina Park and Rec, which medical bags and a couple of little items here and there, which they've been very supportive. So.
Good. I'm just curious, what's the season? Is it winter?
It's the fall and winter. So the preseason we'll start the preseason now. Now the school started, but the fall season is when we start November 27th through March 7th. So it's a long season for the kids. After that, we have a postseason for Folkstyle, which goes into April. And then we have a freestyle Greco season that goes into July. So we have a plethora of different types and different styles of wrestling. We just want to have the kids get the exposure to it. And once they develop in those different types of styles, they'll see their progress into the high school range. So,
Age group?
Age group from pre-K to, the youth program is pre-K to 5th grade. And then we have a middle school from 6th to 8th, obviously, and then high school program for the postseason. Postseason would be a pre-K to 12th grade freestyle Greco.
So high school wrestlers could also participate in that?
Correct. And that's the flexibility part that I'm talking about. The flexibility of me having the ability to set up a program, open it up to all ages, and then schedule my own hours.
Right.
Rick?
And who do you actually compete against?
Okay, so this is a very big wrestling state, so we competed with other districts, other high school clubs in the area. We were part of the Minneapolis Youth League last year, where there was, I believe, 6 to 7 teams that we've been involved with. Every week we'd have a scrimmage on Thursday, a tournament on the weekends. But now we're moving into the USA Wrestling event. So now we are looking at weekend tournaments, and we schedule school club scrimmages during the week with Minnetonka, Richfield, Eden Prairie, and with other schools in the area, clubs in the area.
And you're not running into any conflicts with the school program, with your schedule?
No, not at all.
Using the facilities?
Not at all. This is we've been working directly with the high school. We have a strong parent booster club, and we schedule through our age groups and very well. So we understand exactly how we need to schedule each other's events and tournaments.
So wrestling is a really tight-knit community. It's a really tight-knit group of people, and so we work with youth, middle school, high school, all the coaches, and oftentimes parents are involved in all the programs together. So we're certainly trying to align schedules, space, helping out when the high school team has a tournament, the youth team, the middle school team, we're all there together helping out. When the youth team, we've actually put together a tournament that we hosted for the first year last year. It was attended by over 350 to 400 wrestlers from just around the Twin Cities area. And so we have a really large contingent. This is a sport that both Lou and I we grew up participating in, and it's something that builds a really strong foundation for a lot of life skills. And I think it's been missing in Edina for a while. And so I think we can provide a really good opportunity to a big segment of our population, and we've grown pretty significantly over the last 3 years. I mean, we've continued to get more and more people, and we're fully committed to the program. So we're pretty excited about the progress that we've been making and looking for the partnership and running our own association as well. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Rick?
Any female interest?
Yes. Last year we had 2 young ladies that were participating, which they have a huge USA Wrestling contingent that participates in the state tournaments, the regional tournaments, into the national tournaments. We are still building that piece, and would love to have more females involved.
Good.
So,
Corin, did you have a question? You're good? Okay. Susan, maybe a question for you. From other associations that we've worked with, how much time do we usually figure will be allocated from our own staff and helping to support the associations like the Wrestling Association?
That would be a great question for Tiffany.
Yeah.
And I can't even, honestly, I don't know for sure. the main time commitment would be working with the schedule.
Okay.
So if I had to guess, I don't even feel comfortable guessing.
Okay.
Yeah, but I can look into it, find out from Tiffany a little bit
Yeah,
more,
no problem.
and provide
No
some
problem.
information back to the commission.
Okay.
I would say it would be probably pretty limited
Yeah.
with the amount of work that Lou and I put into the scheduling. We've worked with Lori at Edina High School for the facilities, and I've actually looked at all the facilities when we're putting in a request and made sure that it aligns with the calendar and that there are openings. And so we typically will go through that entire process. So our goal is to use as limited amount of time of other people's time
Okay.
as possible.
And I had one other question too, and again, maybe Susan or Ann, you might have a sense. I see we're collecting some fees for facility gym fee. Does that go to the city or does that go right to the school? Yeah, do you know where that ends up as we collect those?
So the $13
Yes.
is the user fee
Yep.
that comes to the city.
Okay.
And then the Wrestling Association would also have to pay for the use of the gyms at the school district based on the fees that they set.
And that'll be the separate fee that was mentioned in the document as well, right?
Correct.
And then I noticed there was, what was the other one I had an interest into? Oh, what's an inclusion service? I see we have $1 a participant for an inclusion service.
So that would be for any participant that may need some additional help
Okay.
to compete in the program.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so we need a motion on this one, and I think probably if you see from the staff recommendation on page 3, in that first paragraph, we probably have the structure of a good motion here. Would anyone like to provide us a motion on the Wrestling Association tonight?
Well, I don't think I have your terminology right here.
Nope.
But I would move that we do approve the Edina Wrestling Association as a city-sponsored athletic association.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion on our motion in front of us? None? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Passes. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your time and your effort in building this association and the interest in Edina.
Yeah, thanks much for all your personal time, which I'm sure is a lot.
Okay, next up, Arden Park, 90% update. Renee, are you taking this one or in combination with Ann? A tag team again tonight. Great.
All right, Greg, thank you very much. You all are very familiar with Renee by this point in the project, Renee Clark from the Watershed District. We are here this evening to present our 90% update. What we will be talking about this evening is the design development goals that you've been hearing for the last 18 months or so on the project. We'll give you an update on the design process and what we've done so far with public engagement. We'll go over the 90% design, and we'll talk about some of the changes that have been made since the 60% design. We'll give you a budget update, and we'll talk about next steps. So with that, I just wanted to remind you of the design goals that we have been following since the beginning of the project. These are goals that staff between our two agencies did not come up with. This was something that we gathered from a variety of different community engagement sessions. We would like to maintain the rustic character of the park. We want to improve the public experience throughout. We want to increase fishing and in-stream recreation opportunities. We want to improve visual and physical access to the creek. We want to update our aging park facilities, improve public safety, improve biological and geological function of the creek and the surrounding corridor, and improve regional stormwater management. We have had a very significant public engagement dialogue over the past, this goes back to January of this year, but it really goes back another year prior to that. But as you know, we have completed the 30% and the 60%. Right now, we are reporting to the commission on 90%. We're hoping to get your review and comment this evening, and then we will be presenting to the City Council to authorize bids for the project on September 20th. And we will also be presenting the same presentation to the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District Board of Managers, asking for their approval and permitting as well. We, as I mentioned, have done a very significant public process throughout, and I'm just highlighting some of the things that we've done here. If you recall the calendar that I showed earlier, that was a calendar that we presented to the Parks and Rec Commission and was approved by the City Council as well. So far in this design phase, we have completed 4 community meetings. 2 we actually held in the park, very well attended, all of them actually. We have publicly noticed all of our meetings. We've sent out postcards to the neighbors. We've done a lot of social media, very extensive websites on both the city side and the watershed district side, and have done a significant email campaign as well. Specifically, we've done 9 email updates. We've done that monthly throughout the design phase. We have done 4 project fact sheets. The most recent one came out about 2 weeks ago. We have done 4 press releases, and all of those press releases at least ran in the Sun Current. Some were also picked up by other media outlets. We've done over 20 social media posts, and we have done 10 email blasts to the surrounding neighbors. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Renee to talk a little bit more specifics about the project design.
So as you've seen through design development, the project has 4 categories of work: stormwater management, collecting about 80 acres of urban runoff that goes into the creek untreated today. It'll be treated through a system in Arden Park. And new trails, and 1 new bridge and 1 replacement bridge, all that improve access through the park and improve accessibility through the park. Creek restoration, improving the biological and ecological function of Minnehaha Creek itself by removing the dam and improving the vegetative diversity in the corridor, and then improving visual and physical access to the creek, and then updating aging facilities, including the shelter and playground. First, the stormwater management component. Stormwater discharges basically just north of the playground to the creek untreated today. There's a couple of large stormwater pipes. That's approximately an 80-acre drainage area. At the north end of the site, an underground structure will treat or remove sediment and debris essentially prior to discharging into a series of above-ground swales or depressional features that will frame the outside of the park. Visually, they'll be heavily vegetated with trees and a shrub layer to where when you're walking near them, it'll look rustic, vegetated. You won't per se see the bottom of the swales, but they will also be vegetated. And here's an example of what, not particularly what this planting plan looks like, but what a vegetated swale looks like with a footbridge over it. Overall, we're removing over 30 pounds of phosphorus and 18,000 pounds of sediment a year as a result of the project. New trails. The new trail that doesn't exist today is on the left side of the park image along Brookview Avenue. Today, there is not a trail. Pedestrian traffic is on the street. This provides a more safe, user-friendly access. The trail from Brookview Avenue down past the hockey rink will be remade, cutting through to a gentler slope, which will be ADA accessible. There's a new bridge replacing the existing bridge that crosses the creek, and that trail will continue through past the new shelter, playground, and to Minnehaha Avenue. The yellow trail is something we call a nature trail. It's got a couple of different components. From the south or the bottom of the page, the yellow trail heads north and is really small crushed gravel trail till it hits more active park space and turns into an asphalt trail connecting up to the green trail that cuts past the shelter. The yellow trail then on the north, just beyond the playground, is partially boardwalk with a small bridge crossing the creek, and then steps similar to the steps by the ice rink today that go up the slope and connect back up to Brookview. Creek restoration and access. The creek is being, about 2,000 feet of creek being restored with vegetation, structurally with woody debris, and then in length by about 250 feet. Today, as we know, there's a dam that impounds water and converts what is naturally a flowing system to more of a backwater system. The ecological and biological restoration metrics that we hope to achieve are defined in a efficacy monitoring plan. We've got pre-project data for stormwater management as well as the existing conditions of the creek today about biology and other geomorphologic measures like pools and riffles that will be measured again post-project as we move ahead to demonstrate how the project is performing functionally. The creek corridor will be restored in a couple of ways. The primary way is removing buckthorn in the hill below Brookview, and then enhancing vegetative diversity throughout the creek corridor next to the creek. Today, there is one creek access south or north of West 54th, and then one on the downstream side south of West 54th. The dam requires often portage across West 54th. Post-construction, you will not need to portage, and there will be no official access or canoe launch on that south side. Everything will be contained in the park to avoid that street crossing. And there will be 2 additional creek access points that will provide opportunities for loops and recreation within the park, as well as an amenity as a regional resource to launch and go downstream or to come from upstream and get out at this place. The picture is a image of the design. The plans call for limestone block rocks, which match the character and aesthetic of limestone used in other places of the park. Versus the fieldstone look, but that's generally what that image, what those landings will look like. Something that we are just completing exploration of is the final disposition of a concrete slab beneath the West 54th Street Bridge. The picture on the right is the dam just upstream of West 54th Street. As you go underneath the bridge, there is also a slab of concrete that exists that we are looking to, that since 60% design, we showed you this image where we were looking to cut a channel or completely remove that slab, providing a naturalized creek bottom through the bridge continuing downstream. The primary benefit of doing this is that in low flow, you'll still be able to have fish passage and canoe through there longer. So it extends the flow period through that section of the creek. And this is what it looks like downstream of that concrete slab. Tree replacement is something that's been discussed at length since we initiated design. And we are presenting our best estimates now as design is near complete with the tree impact and replacement summary. With the park for construction, 79 total trees will be impacted as a result of construction. 22 of those are ash. There's an additional 57 ash trees that we are taking as a result of the project. If you recall, the commission recommended and council authorized ash tree management as part of the project. Emerald ash borer is identified in the city of Edina, and ash trees will eventually die. So we looked at this as an opportunity to efficiently access and remove ash trees, accompanied with a robust replacement plan, all as part of the project cost. The tree replacement plan includes about 407 trees, of which about 300 are either balled or burlapped or potted, so pretty significant trees. And then we are looking at incorporating about 10 really large, approximately 20-foot specimen trees as a result of the project too. Areas to point out of tree preservation, the willows near the West 54th Street Bridge will be maintained. And then the tree island in the middle of the free skate, which today has 4 oaks, will be maintained, with 2 of those oaks being removed and replaced with new trees. So there'll still be 4 trees there, but 2 of them, which are doing very poorly today, will be replaced.
Thank you, Renee. I would like to give an update on the shelter and then also on the playground. The shelter project has been in process since April of this year. I want to thank Commissioner Itis and Nelson, Struther, and McCauley for helping with that process. We had 8 committee members that were residents of the Arden Park neighborhood, and then in addition to the commissioners, we had several staff that participated in that process so far as well. We are, with the entire plan, at about the 90% design phase. We are, however, not at the 90% design phase when it comes to the shelter building. If you recall, back in early May, we presented to the Parks and Rec Commission and the City Council a design that looked similar to the Pamela Park design in the lower left corner. That was a design that was brought forth by the commission after recommendation from the neighborhood committee and also open houses that we held in the park. After that presentation to the Parks and Rec Commission and presentation to the City Council, the neighborhood committee had more conversations and really favored a different roof design for the shelter building. The good thing is that we still are in the same location with the building. We're still in the same orientation with the building. We're still in the same building footprint. In fact, the entire inside of the building is still the exact same. So if you look over on the left-hand side of the diagram, what you're seeing there is approximately 1,500 square feet inside and an overall footprint of about 2,500 square feet when you look at the overhangs on both the north and the south side. Included in the building are 4 unisex restrooms. 2 would be accessible from the exterior, and then all of them would be accessible from, 2 of them would then be accessible from the interior of the building. There is a mechanical room that would house all the mechanical equipment for the building and also the lighting for the entire park. And then there is a community room space that would accommodate between 40 and 50 people. So the big thing that we need to decide in this building yet is what is the roof structure going to look like. As I mentioned, we've talked about a couple of different designs. We received a recommendation from the committee to go with a design that had a gable roof. After that, Staff took a look at it, specifically our sustainability coordinator, and had really strong concerns about the lack of daylighting and overall sustainability of that building. That prompted more conversations and exploration with our architect. And what we're currently doing is we are going to do some cost estimates for construction for a gable roof design and something that possibly has a more modified roof design that would allow more light into the space. When we were having conversations with, Janet, can you do the, do you know how to do the document? I should actually make sure that I have one. Yep, I do. I should have asked you before. Oh, here we go. So the option that the neighborhood committee was recommending is option 4. And when our architect looked at all 9 of these options that the committee reviewed, the option that provides the most daylighting to the building is number 7. So what we would like to do is we would like to just do an analysis of operating costs for a facility that has a resemblance of number 7. It might not look exactly like that, but have a resemblance of number 7, and then also run some daylighting options on something that looks like 4 or 5, possibly with a gable roof design with either gable dormers or shed dormers. So 2 things that we would like to study specifically. We would like to look at the sustainability of the building, specifically as it relates to daylighting. And we would also like to look at construction cost estimates for both buildings so that we can make an educated decision. We would like to hopefully have this information by October, report back to the committee again with our findings, then report back to the Parks and Recreation Commission our findings in October, and then also hopefully the City Council in October so we can make a decision. Obviously, this is a very big decision. It's a very important decision. We want something that's going to fit with the neighborhood. We want something that's going to fit with the design goals that the neighborhood committee called out for us early on. One thing that I remember loud and clear, and Commissioner Itis and Nelson might remember from the first meetings, we talked a lot about how this building was going to be used. But the first thing that people talked about was they wanted to be light, they wanted to be open, they wanted to be airy, and they wanted a lot of windows. And so we feel like the direction that we're heading is very much in the original design goals and the programmatic goals of the facility. We just want to make sure we're going to be building a building that's going to be around for many decades. And we want to make sure that we're making the best financial decisions, we're making the best sustainability decisions. Our sustainability goal is in the upper left-hand corner of the slide, and I know it's really small, but we want to minimize our carbon footprint to meet climate mitigation goal of 30% reduction by 2025 for the entire community. And we feel as a city, we need to be leading those goals and leading those initiatives if we're hoping to have other people follow and meet those goals as well. So that's where we stand with the building. Commissioner Miller?
Yeah, just a question on when we're looking at the sketches that you've got up there, the orientation as it sits, is it going to be short ends north and south?
That's a great question. I think I can show you on both what is on the document table, and then I'll show you on what's on the PowerPoint presentation as well. So if we were to look at number 4 or number 7 or any of these actually, this is the south side of the building that would be looking down the length of the creek. The other side is the north side of the building that would be facing the playground. And then this side is facing east, that would be facing the open skate area. So then, Janet, if you can flip back to the PowerPoint presentation, I would appreciate it. Then this is the orientation looking north. This is the orientation that is towards the creek, towards the open skate area, and then looking south down the creek. I'm sorry?
We couldn't see where you were pointing on that last
Oh
one.
yeah, you can see where I'm pointing.
Looks good from your side, though.
Thank you. Okay. Renee knew what I was talking about. Sorry about that. This is to the north. This is on the creek side. This is looking down the creek, and this is the open skate area. Sorry about that.
The playground is on the north.
Yes,
True.
the playground is right up here. Correct. And one of the other changes, actually two of the changes that we've made since the 60% design, we heard a lot from the neighborhood committee that they wanted a nice view from the shelter building to the playground. And so two really pretty significant changes that we've made is we have moved the trail to the north side of the playground. So it'll just be grass area between the shelter building and the playground. And there were also some stormwater swales that were coming through there. And we removed those stormwater swales and moved them over along the street.
And the other thing I think I'd heard, Ann, at the open house, you can tell me if this is accurate or not, was the orientation of the shelter building in its new location and where the playground would be. There was a direct sight from the playground to the bathroom entrance. Is that indeed true?
Yes, that is true. The building, let's maybe go back. This one is a good one. So at the open house, if you weren't able to make it, we did have the shelter building staked out, and we had the stormwater swales staked out as well, and the center line of the creek was also staked. So if you're in the playground area here, you will have a sight line to the restroom in this area.
Other questions? Rick?
Yeah, and do you have a goal for the report coming to the committee?
In terms of timeline?
Yeah.
October. Yep, I'm still waiting for information from the architectural team as to how quickly they're able to do the turnaround. But I'm going to shoot to report back to the commission and to the city council in October. It would be our goal beyond that to put the shelter building out to bid maybe in January, because we would be hoping to start construction on a shelter building depending upon the type of spring we have, hopefully not like last spring. Hopefully we would be able to start construction in April.
And the ask for us as a commission tonight, is there any action we need to take? Is it just comments for you to continue to move this forward? What do you need?
We are looking for just a review and comment. So when we complete our presentation, Renee, Ross Bittner from our engineering division is here, and Tom Swenson, Assistant Director of Parks and Natural Resources, is here. We would all like to stand and answer any questions that you might have. And then after that, we would like to take review and comment. Janet and I will put those comments together, and it will be part of the staff report that we present to the City Council on September 20th, but no formal action.
Rick?
Yeah, for Renee, the 10, 20-foot trees, are those distributed throughout the park, or?
Commissioner Itis, commissioners, they will be field placed throughout the park in pretty prominent visual areas. Some areas earmarked, and city staff and with the forester will make kind of the final call where those will be used. But the playground area and entrance, the shelter building area, and the free skate area are three kind of general areas that those trees are earmarked for.
Good, thank you.
Others? Mike?
Yeah, I'm sure the answer is affirmative, but you talked about on the north trail, there would be some boardwalk and then a bridge. I'm assuming that bridge will be high enough so people, tubers and canoes can get under it.
Absolutely.
I just was picturing boardwalk across the water. Be a lot of headaches. And then the stormwater swales, I guess in my head I was picturing that there would be water in it. The pictures you showed look like mostly vegetation. What will those look like in every day for us park users?
Commissioners, the stormwater swales will look like vegetation, trees and bushes, essentially, planting areas. They aren't designed to hold water for more than 2 days after a really large drain event, and then they draw down. They're very heavily planted. So from a ground level perspective, walking by, they'll look like landscaped areas.
Okay.
Julie?
I heard some questions about the swales and a concern from some residents that they could be a breeding ground for mosquitoes. And from what I'm hearing from you, that's not the case, and I just want to clarify that piece.
Commissioners, it is not the case that they're not designed to hold water. They will, they're designed to, in smaller events, drain pretty quickly. In large events, drain within 2 days.
Brent?
It's my first meeting, so I'm not super well versed on the issue. But how deep would the swales be? Because could it possibly be a concern that if they were maybe somewhat unmarked, that there'd be accidents surrounding those?
That's a really good question. Thank you. I don't have the exact answer for you with the plans in front of me, but approximately 5 feet from the ground level to the bottom, and the thickness of the plantings around them, and the defined access through them with little bridges or trails should mitigate that concern. Thanks.
Hayden?
Just a question about from the beginning of the presentation. Timeline-wise, how long after the park redesign is finished would you want to survey it and make sure you've met your ecological and waste removal goals?
That's another very good question. When do you collect the post-project data? And I believe the plan calls for data collection starting the spring of 2020. And there's several different types of data, including macroinvertebrates to other more biological and vegetative conditions that they will assess and measure throughout. Natural resource restoration, like a wound from skinning your knee, takes time to heal and evolve. And so I suspect that some of those metrics will begin to be measured more immediately than others, and that the trends and long-term project effects attributing to the work will be established over a bit of period of time.
I have 3 questions. I think maybe the first to you, Ann. I know in the report there is some detail around cost changes expected from 60% to 90%. At a summary level, could you give us a kind of a high picture of what the difference is so far? And I know we still have more shelter building cost yet to be developed.
We sure can, and we actually have a couple of more slides.
Oh, okay.
And we do have a little bit of budget information on one of those slides. So how about if we do these two? Okay.
And let me go back to the tree question.
Okay.
Because another question that I heard at one of the open houses was, I think the numbers sound great, 136 or so trees coming out, over 400 trees coming in. And one of the comments I received back was, well, it depends upon how you're defining tree. So our definition in here of a tree is 8 inches in diameter or more.
Correct.
And someone was saying, well, how about all these 7-inch diameters? They're going to be cut out too, but aren't they trees and we're just not counting them? How would you respond to what happens in that instance?
There are trees that fall into that category that aren't counted, and the way we crafted our definition of tree was following the Edina's tree replacement ordinance. Mm-hmm. So when in construction throughout Edina, a tree is considered applicable to your tree policies when they're 8 inches or greater, and that's what we applied to this project. So we don't have those smaller trees quantified.
Okay. And then on the creek situation, I think this was on the FAQ document. We talk about, let's see, where was it? The impact on the fishing hole. And I know we've got two things coming out, the removal of the dam and then the concrete slab underneath the bridge. And I think if I remember this correctly, we make a statement that removing the concrete panels will not impact the fishing hole. Will removal of the dam have any intended impact or expected impact on the fishing hole?
So removal of the dam or the concrete slab will not change the flows that cause the scour of the fishing hole.
Yep.
That's what we know. We don't have good data on what's that fishing hole done over the last 5 or 10 years, how has it changed over time, and if we didn't do the project, how might it change over time? We have modeling that shows the size of sediment that the creek moves under certain flow conditions today, and that the creek will move under certain flow conditions post-project. And those flow conditions that move sediment post-project that cause the scour downstream will still occur.
Okay, thank you.
We have just a couple more slides. Thank you. Just wanted to give you a quick update on the playground. The playground and the safety surface has been selected. The container size is just under 5,000 square feet. We had a $125,000 budget for this project. We did 2 open houses and 2 surveys and got just a tremendous amount of feedback from the residents on the playground. And the safety surface that was selected by the great majority of residents was the engineered wood fiber safety surface. We have the playground as you are seeing in front of you. We have 3 slides, one of which is a double slide. We have 2 infant swings, 2 regular swings, 1 friendship swing, which is this swing, which gives people an opportunity to sit and face each other while they're swinging. Those are very popular. We have a raft swing, which is another very popular playground element. We have it's called a wee saw, which is a newer version of a teeter-totter. We have some balance obstacles and some climbing obstacles with this as well. So we're very happy with the design, how it turned out. We have selected colors for the playground that are very natural. That was something that we heard from the neighbors as well. So we're very excited about the playground design.
So does that mean the colors you had there, the neon green, yellow, are not the natural colors, or are they
Susan,
indeed
do you
the
know
natural
are
colors?
they must be. Yeah, those are the colors that were selected by the residents.
All right,
yes.
thanks.
So then regarding the budget, I'm going to let Renee talk a little bit about the project budget that we have today.
Before you, we have the total estimated project cost at 90%, which you see is $4.725 million. This is slightly less, I believe, than the 60% cost. The cost is distributed amongst, I have it broken out by category of work, which partially mimics the way our cost share agreement is split up, but not perfectly. So what we will be doing with these numbers before it goes to council is perfectly match how these numbers fit into our cost sharing buckets. The city and watershed district's portion of this project has changed over time, and the city's portion more so over time. To roughly explain the change over time is basically just the certainty of what we were building when we started with the estimate. When we started with the cost estimate at 30 and even 60%, we had about a year's worth of concept design and a lot of certainty really on what we were building for the creek and natural resource components. and we had earmarked places for facility improvements with no concept and no real design development aspects to those. So as concept design and then even design development with the playground has occurred over time, those numbers, the electrical and other utilities that are associated with all those things have become more detailed and more known. So that has influenced that bucket. I also want to point out this is an estimate based on the engineers look at costs of similar work that was bid in the past and put a small margin of error and give us an estimate. They're not bids from a contractor. It's what the engineer thinks it will cost to bid. So we won't know the actual project cost until the project goes out for bid. But with the more certainty of design, this number gets more certain with the engineer providing us the estimate. There's less margin of safety backed into this number as we get further along in design. One thing that we are still, it's 90%. There's some items that we're finalizing exactly what we're building. One of those things is under the West 54th Street with that piece of concrete. And there are other line items, I guess, in this bid that affect the overall total project cost, which will lead the engineer to, more precisely tell us what he thinks the bid prices will be, and that will be part of the final number used in the bidding process. But I will say this number is, very close to what the engineer will at 100% say, here's what I think it'll cost before the project goes out for bid. Next steps. The item is being brought to City Council for final action and authorization to go out for public bid. This same action is requested by our Watershed District Board of Managers the end of September. We anticipate getting the project out for bid the very first part of October with a bid award just before Thanksgiving on November 15th. Construction, vehicles showing up on site by middle of December. Earthwork probably after Christmas, but it'll just depend on how quickly contracts can get aligned and how quickly the contractor can mobilize, the weather, etc. But that's what we're thinking for the heavy earthwork. Throughout bidding and construction, we do anticipate a lot of questions, concerns, and a bit of public shock, and even shock by us at how messy construction really is. We will continue to send email updates and coordinate between the city's communication department and the Watershed District's communication department to alert residents on schedule and what's happening.
So with that, we are officially finished and would be happy to answer any more questions.
Good.
I just have one brief question, just to the point that you just mentioned in terms of the cleanliness and the times of construction. I would assume, but I don't want to assume, I want to ask, that we would follow the same guidelines that we have for housing constructions in terms of the times that the constructions can happen and take place at, as well as the parking of vehicles only on one side of the road. So for people who are trying to still live in those areas, that they can still take place, they can actually still get to their house safely. Being a person who's lived in construction areas, as well as making sure that we are having the same kind of a guideline in terms of phone numbers to call with concerns in terms of that. I would just hope that we'd have the same kind of guidelines for a city project that we're holding builders to.
If you don't mind, Ross is one of our experts in this area, so I think he'd be great to answer the question from the city side.
Hi, Commissioners. The construction contract will observe all the same safety and work hour standards that we hold developers and our own city projects to. One of the key elements of an earthwork job this large is we want to make sure we're protecting the nearby road infrastructure and getting a lot of that work done during the winter times. It's going to be important. Work hours are 7 to 7, 7 to 9 Monday to Friday, and then it's in the code. No work on Sundays, but the work day is often so much shorter because of the daylight that we usually see narrower work hours in the winter anyway.
My biggest concern is because it's in the winter and we have snow, that if people are going to place lots of cars and such to move the earth, and then we also have snowplows, and then people who try to live there and maybe park on the street, how that's going to take place. Because in the winter, our roads aren't nearly as wide as they usually are. So I just want to understand how that, because those trucks are, I'm assuming, going to be rather large to move this much of the ground. So I just want to make sure that we're really especially cognizant of that and the safety of it, because not only for getting it through there, but when it's the buses trying to get through there and the kids trying to get off, especially with now the changes and how far kids are having to walk with the new start times. They're now walking up to 0.7 miles to a bus stop, so that would not be good in a situation where there's lots of trucks.
Yeah. Just as a quick reaction, a lot of the access happens off of Minnehaha Boulevard, and that's a one-way or a parking on one side of the street restriction as it is. We don't see overnight parking; it's not allowed. But if we had to restrict parking to try to gain access, or we had a lot of snow piles for a really rough winter, we could always post emergency no parking restrictions, but that would be a kind of a last resort. We want to make sure that that access is still available.
Other questions? Mike?
Yep. 3, easy to maybe a little more difficult. Are we planning for benches around the playground?
We will, yes, we will have benches.
Okay, easy. And then just to be clear here, it sounds like creek dam removal for sure, concrete, we don't know. Is that correct?
I'd say correct. However, we are just finalizing our engineer review of alternatives for the concrete removal, and I'm relatively certain it'll partially at least be removed, if not entirely.
But dam for sure.
Correct.
Concrete still under question, okay. And then going back to the construction, since we're going to be re-meandering, what actually happens to the creek when we're kind of ripping everything apart?
Winter construction is one thing that helps us a lot. There's no flow from Grays Bay Dam on Lake Minnetonka. There can be pretty dry, easy, frozen times to do this work. There's a dewatering plan that's part of the contract, which if there is water in the creek, they would essentially pump it and run it in temporary pipes or hoses around the work area to keep it dry to get the work done.
So, but downstream then, any water that there would be would still get down there?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Any other questions? I have a couple just from a project perspective. So looking back, I think the history shows we finalized this master plan about 14 months ago. So maybe Ann and Renee, for each of you, as you look back the past 14 months, what would be one thing out of this project that has really pleased you from either what we've gone through, the results, all the way up to today? And then the second would be looking forward. We've got 3.5 months until we break ground. What's one thing that you would call out that you're most concerned about still, that we either don't know it yet, should be aware of it, haven't made a decision on?
I've been really pleased at the public participation in the process, sticking with it for such a long period of time. And I'm also really pleased with how I think the concept plan really responds to the design goals of the park. What I'm most nervous about, and this is kind of true for a lot of natural resource restoration, opening day when construction is complete, plants take a couple of seasons at least to really kind of come to fruition and, to realize the visual, character and expression in a planting plan. So I think just the patience of us as project managers and the public to, wait for things to grow. And then I think long-term planning, how we continue the management of the natural areas and continually reassess the opportunity to kind of enhance edge conditions to maintain the visual character that's intended.
Okay, thanks. Ann?
I certainly second everything that Renee said. It's been an absolute pleasure working with Renee and the entire watershed district on this project. Our consultants that we've been working with on the project have been top-notch. It's been fun to partner with our engineering division again on another project. And I also agree that I feel like we have done a great job of reaching out to our residents in a variety of different ways. And I feel that we have really responded as best we could to their concerns to make this project as good as it possibly could be. I think something that makes me concerned or nervous, I don't care if it's this project or if it's any other project, golf course project that we have bid recently, I always get nervous with the bidding environment, and our estimates are as good as our engineers can possibly give us, but until we put that project out to the street for a public bid, we don't know if it's going to come in at budget, under budget, or 10, 20% over budget. So I always get nervous, but we should be bidding at a good time for good winter work and then also good spring work too. So I'm going to remain nervous but very optimistic as well.
Okay, good, thanks. If there are no other questions, then I think your ask is for us to provide some comments.
Yes,
is that right?
Please.
Mike, would you be prepared to kind of start us off with comments on what we've heard on the 90% design, at least from everything except the shelter building? We know that's not at 90% design, but certainly open to your comments on that as well.
Okay. I was not able to go to this last meeting. And I am curious, I think you guys at least were there, right? What the folks around there have been, what their feeling is about it, because I know it was fairly controversial when we first started, but it seems like now everybody's getting more excited about it, but I'd be curious to hear about that. As far as the design goes, I'm happy if the residents are happy, and it seems like there has been a tremendous amount of input to it. Which is great to see. And so if they're involved and they're driving, or at least forming a lot of the decisions, and they're liking what's coming out of it, I think it's going to be spectacular. I mean, I think it looks great on paper. I think it'll be a very, very useful park. And it's useful now, but I think it'll be enhanced from what I've seen. So I don't, that's the only comments I really have.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Julie?
I was able to attend, not the full meeting, but it was sort of a people pass through meeting, and it was interesting to hear the conversations. There's still some pretty specific questions about things like how the swales work, but I felt like the work that was done to stake out where the swales were, where the creek would be, where the building would be, I think helped residents visualize what it's going to look like, not just what they've seen on paper, but really an idea of how it would fit within the community. I think the community comment and the way that the community has been engaged has really been reflected in the final 90% product that we're at right now. And I'm really excited about the project. I think it'll be an asset. I do think the comment about needing patience, about transition. It will be construction, and likely probably pretty messy construction when it's going on, but that ultimately it'll be a really, really great park, I think.
Good, thanks. Corin.
So I would mimic what they've already said as well, but I think the big aha is and we talked about this when we first got here, is I think the price tag is really high, and I think that it's really great. I think a lot of people are really excited about it, but I think the price tag is really high, and I think people are nervous about that too. I mean, it's a lot of money, and I think we need to make sure people already think that we sit on this big egg of money that we don't. When they ask us to fix all these things, but we don't have this huge budget that we're just throwing money out. And I think that people see this number and that makes them think, oh, well, actually they do. So I think that's my biggest concern, is the high price tag that it has on it, and making sure that it doesn't drive other concerns. But I think the project looks great. I'm happy with it. I've been involved on the building itself. I think that we're always going to have people who are happy and always have people who are wishing it was different. I actually was excited about the building that was in the documents today, but I think that looks really great. I'm really excited for it. I do think the construction is going to be messy, and I think just keeping a positive attitude through that. And I keep hearing it's going to be a really terrible winter from the Farmer's Almanac, but who knows if that's right, but I keep hearing it. But I think that it's important just to keep that in mind, that it's going to get better, but people get negative, and I think it's just, that's all. But I think it's great, and I'm happy to be involved with it.
Good, thanks. Rick.
Well, I attended probably all the public engagements, so I certainly agree with Ann that I think we did a good job as a commission. I think we've had a learning process here also, particularly how our working committees go forward, both in terms of length, number of participants, and just setting some guidelines to make them probably more effective. I think the final product will be certainly probably beneficial for our community. It'll be well received. So, thanks.
Thanks, Rick. Aiden and Bryn, you've had 50 minutes of this in your commission career. Any thoughts or comments from what you heard tonight?
I'm someone who in the past lived a few blocks away from Arden Park and used the facility a lot. I'm an ice skater, so I use that aspect of the park in the winter a frequent amount. And from what I've heard tonight, a lot of the problems and issues that I've seen in the park as an Edina resident seem to have been addressed in these new plans. The facilities were starting to wear out. You could definitely tell from the perspective of a resident. And so I think the plans I've seen here tonight seem to address most of the problems that I've seen. I'm excited to have a new park.
Thanks. Aiden, anything?
I have been to Arden Park very few times, but from what I've seen here tonight, the proposed benefits and enrichment to this park looks really good. And that's all I have.
Good, thank you. Not much that might be new or different. I'm also pleased with where we are on the 90% design. I really like the focus and the continued tie to the design goals. Again, from having been in the park probably more in the last 18 months than I have in the previous 18 years that I've been here, I'm impressed with the beauty of it and what the neighbors love about it. I can understand how we want to maintain a rustic character, but in the back of my mind, right next to rustic is run down. And if we don't continue to kind of put some time and effort into it, it can too easily kind of fall into that other category. So I like what the approach is that we've taken to maintain the rustic character and be willing to spend some money in it and make some improvements as well. I was also struck by the time we've spent on this in the history. I think the input, the time that we've taken to get input has been both positive and negative, if we're frank about it. But I think it was still the right thing to do. And we have to learn from that process and, to Rick's point, do it better as we bring the next one in. Not eliminate it, not be fearful of it, but continue to improve and do it better. I also think that the design team has been very responsive to what we've gotten as far as input. So, credit to Renee, to Ross, to Tom, to Ann and your staff and others that have been involved. I think we've listened. I think we've heard. We haven't always decided to do exactly what we've heard, but I think we have been responsive at trying to drive improvements. So, to me, that's been a big positive. I also like the point about the patience, and Member Miller has mentioned this as well. Sometimes it's year 1, year 2, and even year 3. We're saying, wait a minute, is this exactly what we were expecting? But it will be different. But I think the patience will deliver an enhanced park. And frankly, as a member in Edina, I would have no fear of looking to live in that area, because I think that's going to be a great benefit for the residents that can walk to it and really enjoy it. I think the funding partnership is a special opportunity for us. We have so many other things that we've thought about, that we've developed, that we have a plan for, and then we kind of stop and we kind of wait and try to think about funding. So I think shame on us if we don't take a good opportunity of a funding partnership to take some movement and take some action. And then finally, even though we've been doing it for 14 months, we still need to keep working on a communications plan and continue to keep people in the neighborhood and others that are interested on understanding what the next step is, what the impact of that step could be, what might happen 3, 6, 9, 12, 36 months out in the future. And I think that's going to be important for us as well. But overall, very pleased with where we are. I think we're headed in a really good direction, and excited to see the bids come in a very beneficial situation for the city of Edina, and let's break ground in the middle of December. So I hope that's the path we stay on. Good.
Thank you.
Yep. Well, Ann and Renee, thank you both for, again, another nice presentation and a good, thorough recap of where we are. Thanks. All right. Next up on our agenda is our 2019 work plan. So we have had our 2018 work plan that we have made various levels of progress on. We won't touch on that tonight, but we'll cover that update in our next meeting. But now we have a commitment to get back to the City Council our suggestions for a 2019 work plan for the Park and Recreations Commission. They obviously will have their inputs. I believe Commissioner Darlene and I will have a meeting, is it later this month, Ann, with the City Council? When do we have the sit down with the council to present the plans across each of the boards and commissions? Do you know?
I can't tell you the exact date, but it typically occurs in October.
In October.
Yep. We present our work plans to the city administration, and then they compile them, and then they provide some feedback on the work plans, and then you will come to the city council at a work session,
Okay.
I believe in October. Jan, do you know when that date is?
All right, so we'll have that coming up sometime in October.
Yes.
But tonight what we have is from our meeting last month, we're likely to have 2 carryover items from 2018 that will come again in our 2019 work plan, and that was finalize the study and report in the document you should have in front of you from our agenda packet. Finalize the study and report for utilization of fields, courts, and rink capacity. And the second being that we had added back late this year, investigate alternative funding options to support future growth and development of Edina's parks, programs, and green spaces. Still a chance that the John Philip Sousa Band may be an item, and hopefully from what we're hearing tonight, we'll have Arden Park complete and that won't be an item. But we then had some suggestions on the top half of the sheet of about 7 items to think about for considering, and I'm going to say based on the input that we got last year, 2 is too few, 6 is too many. Somewhere in between those numbers, we want to develop a list of, call it 4 or 5 items that we suggest back to the City Council as our prioritized suggestions for work plans. So those, what do we have here? About 7 different suggestions that we came up with from our brainstorming last meeting. And we'll pause there for any insights, comments on what commission members think about those, or if something else has bubbled up that we ought to have on the list that we missed last month. And with the intent of, as I said, trying to get us down to maybe selecting 3 more of these from the top half of our page. Julie.
I don't have the list in front of me, but on the Race and Equity Task Force recommendations, I thought we had discussed at least the strong potential that that might be split up into 2 different items, and I forget how it was split up, but that there was at least some discussion that those items, if we were to take all of them up, were enough to be broken out into 2 actual work plan items.
Right. And I have those details, so as we're kind of tossing out other ideas, I'll pull out what those were as well, so we can take a look at that.
And I guess I would just say I strongly support including those on the work plan. So.
Okay. Other thoughts?
So I wasn't at the last meeting when you guys discussed this, but some of these involve big investments. So I don't know how we're to determine whether they're a priority or not. I don't know if Grandview is going to be anything or not. I don't know if Fred Richards is going to do any development next year or not. So I don't even know how to discuss those.
Okay. Ann, any insight on us for that?
I would say at this point in time, I don't see a likely funding source for anything at Fred Richards for this next year. There is one item that is still in potential contention as it works its way through the CIP process, and that would be a potential playground at Fred Richards. But that would be the only thing for Fred Richards. And regarding Grandview, next month, the City Council will be receiving an appraisal on the Public Works property. And so we'll know more in October regarding the City Council direction on that site.
Okay. Corin or Rick, any thoughts from your perspective?
If we could talk about the Fred, I mean, if we want to talk about particular items, I mean, when Ann mentioned the playground, I think the whole park lawn area there, and as we walked the other night or a couple Wednesdays ago with the mayor, he did walk in that northeast corner there, and there were several residents from Park Lawn that walked that night in the Fred. And I just think for me to consider, you know, having some type of facility in that part of Edina would be really nice. So.
Okay.
I mean, I agree. I feel like we did so much work on Fred Richards that it's really disturbing that that it just sits there, and then people know that we worked on it and we had a lot of meetings, so they keep asking like, so what's happening? So what's happening? And we don't know. So I wish we could work on it, but if there's no money, we can't. But that's the part that's just disappointing. And so again, I don't feel like we have a great communication around that, because we create this big work and then it just stops. So I think that part is really disappointing to me in terms of that. But if not, I would say the one on the top also is, I think, of an importance. We started with doing the signage of, in the parks, but the more that we can partner and create better plans for people to get around it safely, especially as we expand into areas that we may, God forbid, have a lid or something else like that, that we have ways that we're able to get people around safely. So that would be my other takeaway if we cannot do Fred Richards.
Okay. Aiden and Bryn, anything early on? I know you've just had a chance to look at this tonight, but okay. So some thoughts that I had. First of all, Julie, to your point, the specifics that we had around the inputs, recommendations from the Race and Equity Task Force. So 2A was consider naming a public facility after BC and Ellen Yancey, and what that might fit for us. 20B was partner with the community of color in Edina to identify if barriers exist for broader utilization of our parks, assets, programs, and if so, elicit community solutions for consideration. So to kind of bring that back. I think then around 21, if my notes on those are correct, 21 was a lot to do around requirements for associations, establishing a policy on enforcement mechanisms for, well, I should say 21A was requiring all associations to operate within the city's expectation regarding race and equity and inclusion. And then 21B was establish a policy and enforcement mechanisms for, in essence, of enforcing 21A. And 21D was establish expectations that outside vendors, depending upon how we define vendors, adhere to and process and procedure on race-based issues and discriminatory practices. And then I think we said 21C at the time might have fallen out to be a city council or some other aspect of, I think that one was create clear city expectations on a race and equity policy. So those were the ones that we pulled out kind of from a staff perspective of things we might be able to consider. And so if I look at the ones we had, I think Corin's point about, maybe we continue building off of the signage that we did before and think now about more from wayfinding throughout the community. How do we get to parks and assets? That could be one that we might want to consider. I also am of the opinion that we should, as a commission, put something in here about Fred Richards. I understand we don't have clear guidance yet from a commercial perspective to the south of it, but I would be interested in, as a commission, if we would offer up to the city council that we relook at the Fred Richards master plan, much like we did with Braemar, and do some prioritization, and maybe even do some consideration of what do we think could get done without a significant amount of funding. What might that look like? What no regrets moves could we make to start to improve the Fred that we wouldn't then have to go back on if we decided on the west side we were going to do wetland banking, and all of a sudden we're bringing in big equipment. But I think there may be an opportunity for us to suggest that we want to get serious about trying to find some incremental improvement of the Fred. So I might offer that we consider to think about that. The first one, partner with the Transportation Commission on a joint work assignment. I thought about that a little bit more, and we have in our own strategic plans and our own work that we've done before, we've often talked about having a multi-use trail system throughout Edina that could connect Edina, connect us to our enterprise facilities, and I think that aligns very much with the transportation vision of how do we make Edina less dependent on automobiles and more friendly to other things. And so what I thought might be something for us to consider was, I worded it as saying, develop a 2020 draft plan for an Edina Grand Rounds. And we've got this concept of a Grand Rounds which keeps popping up. We have Centennial Lakes and some things already emanating out of Centennial Lakes. But what if we were to partner with the Transportation Commission and say, okay, in 2020, what would a Grand Rounds look like? I know people have talked about connecting the 4 quadrants, and so maybe that's an opportunity for us to provide some partnership with the goal of saying we want to draft in 2020 of what that Grand Rounds might look like. So I might offer that up as a little bit more specific verbiage behind that first one. Otherwise, the only other insight I had on the race and equity suggestions, and this is my own opinion having read through that, is I think we could probably take on some action for 2A and 20B. I think those are kind of separate standalone things that it might make sense for us to do some work on. Otherwise, I think personally that 21C must be established first by City Council. We have to understand how we create a clear city expectation on a race and equity policy before we can do A, B, and D, which is enforcing that policy. I think we kind of get ahead of ourselves if we do some of those others before 21C is complete. So I would be certainly in favor of doing something with the race and equity recommendations, but my bias might be that we suggest it's a 2A and a 20B. Thoughts, reactions, if we said let's pick 4 new ones, what do people think they might be?
Well, I really like your concept on number 1 and this connectivity. I think since I've been on the commission, we've talked about connectivity, but I don't know if we've ever actually done anything towards achieving that. And I think we've got a great opportunity with 9 Mile Creek trails and with transportation looking at it. So to me, it's a very natural thing for us to do and well within our scope. And I think it could be a chance to be creative in what we're doing. So I think that's a real important one. And I like the way you laid it out because it's got something around it and something achievable. So
Okay.
I would certainly push for that. And yeah, on the race and equity, I don't know enough about it to comment on it, but I defer to Julie on that one. And Fred, it would be great. I mean, Corn brings up a great point. You know, we do this big thing and then we just don't move at all on anything. So it would be a good project to at least, just as you mentioned, Greg, as with Braemar, at least we give a plan. Let's say, here's what we think. When we can do something, here's what we think the order should be.
Okay.
So at least we're prepared.
Yep. All right. Julie, any additional thoughts?
I guess if I had to pick 4, I would pick essentially the top 3 bullets. And I hear what you're saying about 21C needing to be done before we can do the remainder of 21. But so the top 2 bullets and splitting out 2A and 20B as their own items, because though they come from the report or the recommendations from the report, they're sort of very discrete projects,
Yep.
I think. So.
Okay. Corn.
Same as before. I agree with what we've, yes.
If we added your idea of the wayfinding, would that be something that you would say would be a good addition as well?
I think by doing the connectivity is really what that is basically.
We could build that into that, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of ground rounds, I visualize the image of the ground round signs that say, hey, you're here, you want to go to Harriet, you go here. You want to go to Minnehaha, you go here. So it's kind of the same part of your connectivity.
Okay.
In terms of, call it wayfinding or what you will.
Yep.
It's just really.
Doesn't have to be separate. It could be built into that.
Yeah, I think it's really, and I think it would be a disservice to separate those two of those. But I agree that, I for sure agree with Fred Richardson. If the experts can figure out how we can do this better and partner with the different, the more that we can partner with other task force or other, commissions, as well as within the city council, I think the better. Instead of us feeling like we're in little silos, I think that would be a great opportunity to partner. So.
Okay.
I agree.
Rick?
I think the first 4 to me are the most important. The other 3, I mean, the last one in particular. It's last for a reason, I guess.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Aiden and Bryn, anything from your perspectives as you've listened to the discussion? If not, that's fine. You'll just help us accomplish them next year. Okay, so maybe as a trial draft close, and then Ann, Janet, we can work together to finalize the wording a bit, right? But we think we'll have a carryover from 2018 of the top 2, finalize a study and report for utilization of fields, courts, and rink capacity. We expect, we would strongly recommend, based on other discussion we've had, we hang on to investigate alternative funding options. Arden Park, from what we heard tonight, we have a high degree of confidence that that'll be wrapped up and ready to move to action. And the John Philip Sousa Band, as I understand it, we have a bit of we're letting another commission lead to some degree before we really figure out. I think they have to formulate something first, and then it may come back to us. And so whether that rolls over or not is somewhat out of our control. But if it does, I don't think it's a big impact one way or the other. And then looking at new items, if we highlight at least the top 3, so the first one I might say is partner with Transportation Commission on connectivity throughout Edina, with the intent of developing a 2020 draft plan of Edina Grand Rounds, which will have embedded in it some thoughtfulness around wayfinding. The next one would be to take action on recommendations from the Race and Equity Task Force, specifically item 2A and 20B, and we could highlight to call out exactly what those are. And then the third would be building off of the approved master plan for Fred Richards, create a prioritized list of, my words, no regrets actions of how we could take some positive progress with that property that would be a benefit to the surrounding neighbors. And then those, what would that be? Those 5 items with Sousa put on the side at the moment. Those 5 items would be our complement of 2019 work plans. Everybody okay with that? Do we need a formal motion on that, Ann? Or can we just kind of finalize the wording on that and then come back in the October meeting and make sure we get a sign off on it?
I don't think we need a formal motion. Janet and I will work together to put some verbiage together. We'll get it back to you before we need to send it on to city administration.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. Next item. And this is just a discussion item. Again, it's building off of some content in our packet from our park effectiveness brainstorming that we did last month. We developed 12 items that we considered start doing, 3 stop doing, and 5 keep doing. And hopefully, although it was not formally called out until now, you've seen some of these start doing already come into today's meeting. So one aspect of it, Susan and I had an opportunity to sit down with Aiden and Bryn before the meeting tonight, make sure they kind of understand what they were walking into and what it would be like for a first commission meeting. And I hope it wasn't too far off what we talked about, and no curveballs for you. But appreciate your, again, your willingness to be involved in active participation tonight. The other was to start to build in our expectation for time in our agenda. And Ann and I had spent some time on that, and I saw we were presented with a little updated draft as we came in tonight that had at least our expectations of what will there. We'll continue to hone in on that a bit more with the intent of bucketing or bracketing our time frame in our meetings to about 2 hours. And that will be heavily dependent upon starting right at 7 a.m. sharp, getting through our agenda, sticking to the items that are on the agenda. We're going to be a little bit more intentional about using kind of our mental parking lot. But if something comes up you really think is important, but you know it's not on the agenda, please just raise it as a concept or an idea for us to capture in a parking lot, and we'll deal with it later rather than going deep into it if it's not on our agenda. So I think those are the ones that I thought from this grouping. I thought it was a good group, good grouping. We did again talk tonight about fees, the financial aspect of it, having in-depth discussions. Stop doing having in-depth discussions without a better understanding or tie to funding on projects. Maybe in future meetings that will be tied to what we learn and develop an alternative funding, and we can actually kind of develop a source as we see a project, right? So I think this is a pretty good working document just for us to keep in the back of our book, our notebook, front of our minds as we're going through our meetings. I don't know that we need to take any particular formal action on it, but I'm open to any other inputs or insights people have from what we ended up with from our draft discussion last month. Mike.
One thing that I've been thinking about, and we touched it a little bit on it tonight, and I don't have a suggestion for a vehicle to do it, but it's how do we interact more with residents? I know Rick went on the mayor's walk, And so he got some interaction, and we did some open house. You guys went to some of the open houses, and you get some interaction. And then we all get our personal interactions with our peer group and neighbors and such. But not to steal what the mayor does, but is there something that we could do to get just more, I guess, involved with the residents so that they know us more and we know them more, and we hear a little bit more outside of any formal process where we have to, have staff and things set up and money and time and all this thing. The mayor walking doesn't cost anything. And it's just a way to get in touch with our customers. And yep. I just don't know what that vehicle could be, but I just feel like sometimes we come in here and we sit in this room and talk about things, and we don't have maybe as much insight into what people are thinking, other people are thinking other than ourselves and our friends and our neighbors. So it's a thought.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's a great idea. We talked before about assigning out parks. But I don't know how we could do it, but it would be great if we could even just partner with the events. So like when they do have a block party, that we at least could get some form of like a note to know about it. So we could, National Nights Out is one thing because it's everybody, but if it's, I plan it for Todd, so I know about it, but if it would automatically send an email to other people who have Todd or something like that, so we could be able to partner. And I know the city, I talked to you in the summer, the city has their own, a few, like, come to the park for fun block type of parties, but it would have been great for those if we could have gotten hey, it's your 3 parks, can someone come? Because I think that would be a good time for us to be there and just be present instead of, meandering, at their park and wondering who's going to stop by.
Julie.
So we talked a little bit at the last meeting about the open streets
Yep.
as an opportunity, and I wonder if maybe we could add to the keep doing or start doing, continue to look for opportunities like that to bring either formally at the meetings or informally through email for park commission members to attend and volunteer to make themselves available to the community, because there are more opportunities like that. But it seems like we've started doing that informally without it being a bullet on the list, but it's a good point as something that we could keep front of mind to keep on looking for
Yep.
those things.
Yeah, that was one I was going to bring up, Mike, since we missed you at the last meeting. We've got 3 of us that volunteered to spend the afternoon at the Edina Open Streets event. We've got a table reserved where we'll work with staff to get some content of things that are going on, and then just be there to be present and take questions, have discussion, capture more ideas. So yeah. It's Sunday the 23rd. Yep, Sunday afternoon the 23rd. So love to have your name. Julie, Brenda, and I are on it, and we'll add you for this 4th.
Where is it?
50th in France, and we'll be assigned a spot somewhere. I think because of the poll we have, I'm sure we'll have a prime real estate spot and have lots of pass-through visitors. We won't be like down in the construction zone on one end, right? Any other ideas? Our new student members that just walked in fresh and you're thinking, this is how we should be more involved. Any thoughts? Not right now. Okay. Well, this is the kind of input that we look for on a regular basis as you get an opportunity. Then we'll add that, Mike. I think that's a good add because it is one that we've talked about formally and informally. And otherwise, just reissue this at our next meeting to kind of keep in front of us. We did have one that was a bit conflicting. One that said, stop doing recording every meeting, and another saying keep doing, continue to record our meetings because what we do is important. We're not going to resolve that. I think we're going to continue to be present in the community. And again, I voiced my opinion that I think that's valuable. It is a way that we get a chance to reach out and have others hear what's going on and see. And I'm sure our ratings aren't huge, but we might compete with a few other cable shows.
That's part of our getting funding.
getting funding is to improve those ratings?
Well, we're going to get funding by, selling some of those ads.
We'll have we'll have a little scroll bar ad at the bottom, and people will just.
You want to go to Town Hall Brewery? It'll just post in the bottom. It'll be like a scrolling thing. Yeah. Here's the opportunities for funding. Yeah, Fred Richards, here we come.
Either that, or they will say, "Those commissioners have great outfits. Where do I buy that outfit?"
Call me.
Yeah.
I actually did meet a couple last week, and when I said I was on the Park Commission, they said, "That's where we know you from. We watch those all the time." Are you? I thought they were joking at first, but they do. They watch the City Council and the Planning Commission, Parks, so they're out there.
Good. Well, thank you for your inputs on those. I am constantly interested in how we continue to improve and make this an effective time. We spend a lot of time doing that and trying to support Ann and their broader staff and the very much significant amount of time that they spend. So let's continue to raise these opportunities and issues. Next up, comments. Any commissioner comments for tonight? Since the 2 weeks have gone by since the last time we met.
We missed you. This really close to your house.
Rick.
I'll do a personal one. I'm looking forward to another park. As Ann knows, I've spent this summer with my 3 grandchildren. The twins are 5 and their little sister is 3. So we've made a goal at the beginning of the summer to go to as many parks as we could, 2 a day sometimes. And in fact, they were at the house again today. And we do have some nice parks, and we can have some nicer parks, I think, and that's part of our job, perhaps, is to make that happen. But anyway, it was a great summer for me personally. So thanks.
Good. Thanks, Rick. Corin?
I will to add on, just in terms of personal things. So I did go to Red River Kitchen today for lunch, and I've been there several times, but I never could get the hours correct. So I've been there for lunch when they weren't serving lunch, and I've been there on Mondays when they're not open on Mondays. But today I actually went, and it was actually really great. But I think a lot of people don't realize that it's open. And I guess I would give a task out to all of us to just invite a friend to go. So that's why today I was like, I want to invite you to come because you haven't been here. So I think it's just put it out to everyone in the next month to try to invite someone to go have lunch there, because it is really great. And I think that it's a service to them to have us be a good support person for them. So cheerleaders.
Good. Anything else? We'd already talked about one I had, and that was the Edina Open Streets coming up on the 23rd. The other, very much like the new restaurant, when we had our meeting at Braemar, we got a chance to utilize the lawn games. And I know we're still calling that a bit of a soft opening for the lawn games, but really look forward to having those more fully online when the golf course comes up next year. I think that's going to be another great asset on this side of Edina to complement what we have at Centennial Lakes and that lawn games area there too. So be really good stuff as we continue to build those things out in our assets. Ann.
Thank you very much. I have just a few updates for you today. We do have a lot going on in the next month. This weekend, we have the Fall Into the Arts Festival at Centennial Lakes, September 8th from 10 to 6 and September 9th from 10 to 5. It's a great event at Centennial Lakes Park if you haven't been there. Right after the Fall Into the Arts Festival, we are going to be starting the bridge construction at Centennial Lakes. So that'll be a big improvement to access to the other side of the lake at Centennial. A few things in the maintenance side. We have Highland Park hockey boards currently being replaced. We have Bredesen Park walking trail on Saturday, September 15th, weather permitting. The walking trail at Bredesen Park will be closed. The nature trail and the bike trails will remain open, but we're going to be doing some asphalt crack repairs at the Bredesen walking trail. If by chance the weather is bad on September 15th, we will do it the next weekend. We're doing that in partnership between our Park Maintenance Division and our Public Works Division. because our Public Works Division is so busy right now that the only way we can get them to do the work is by doing it on a Saturday. The Valley View Dog Park is getting 260 feet of concrete inside the entry. The dog park. Oh, sorry.
Did we get a new dog park?
Sorry, I've got VV here. Van Valkenburg, yes. The Van Valkenburg Dog Park is getting 260 feet of concrete at the entrance just inside the fence. It's an area of heavy wear, and we just haven't found anything that's held up in that area. It gets very muddy, and so that's going to be starting next week, and we'll be posting those closings as needed. The Braemar, Greg mentioned the courtyard, the lawn games area in the back. We're starting an outdoor beanbag league. It's starting this Thursday, the 6th at 6 p.m. and will run for 6 weeks. We've had a really good response to that. And lastly, the Braemar South Arena will be closed from August 27th through September 16th. We're doing a cleaning and descaling of the refrigeration system in that arena. And that is all I have.
Speaking of Braemar, Ann, that reminded me of kind of a recent walkthrough I did through the backyard rink area. It seemed that some of those, planter seating areas had been chopped up a bit. I assume that's on a maintenance list, hopefully, to be able to get done before the winter season starts.
It is. We have had a real struggle. So are you referring to the seat areas?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
We've had a real struggle with the tops, the wooden tops of those seat areas. So we're still working on a permanent solution.
Okay. All right, good.
Do we have a date, Susan? Do you know?
We do. I don't have a date.
Mike, we don't
We'll
want
have
to think
it-
about the dome going up
Yeah,
yet.
we'll
There's
have
still
it for
plenty
you
of warm
next
weather
month.
ahead.
We'll have that date for you next month, but we're always shooting to have it open the first week in November. So, and it takes about 2 full weeks to get the dome up and the lighting and the netting installed inside.
Okay, good, thanks. If no further last-minute comments, still a few minutes before 9 o'clock, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.